the question I have for you is like, what do you see in founders who are winners or losers?
One element of being a great founder, and we're talking about people that can not just start a small company, but one that can grow it into a much bigger company. One element is salesmanship. And it's not something that you hear a lot of people talk about, but in order to grow a company to a very large size, obviously you have to sell customers, but you also have to sell employees, and you have to sell partnerships, and you have to sell incremental investors, and you're just out, and you own the brand of the company, which you're likely promoting ad nauseum. And if you're not good at that, it'll be very difficult to outrun the other company, that may be competing for that. So that's one. It took me probably my entire 25 years to come to terms with this, but I think you really need to be great at product. Like you just have to be. And I used to try and convince myself that wasn't true. And I learned the lesson the hard way a couple times. And the really great founders have this instinct, not just for the best practices for products today, but where those are going to go when the new technologies allow them to shift to the next place. And that really matters. Many great startups have a go-to-market advantage. They've figured out some hack to get to customers faster. And so that's another element that could be important. And then I borrowed this from Jeff Bezos. I asked him once, how in the world do you do so many amazing angel investments while you're running Amazon? And he said, I only look for one thing, which is that this person's going to go do this thing they claim they want to go do come hell or high water. Like whether I'm involved or not, like this kind of determinism that's unbridled. Like it's just, there's nothing that's going to stop me from doing this. And he has a way of sensing that. So that's another good tip, perhaps.
Do you have a way of sensing if somebody is just going to stay in it until they either do it or they break them?
There's a couple of things you can look for. Like, did they fall into it opportunistically? Because then it might not be there, and some people, I remember when we did the first Uber investment, Travis, his first couple of companies, one of them I think ended up in bankruptcy. The other one, they got money back, but it was pretty obvious he hadn't touched the brass ring and really, really, really wanted to. And he could sense that this thing was going to work, like way bigger than the first two he was on. And I could just tell he wasn't going to not lean in as hard as he possibly could. You could feel it.
Yeah, it's funny. We have a founder. I won't say his name, but he's a stud. But he now has a company. It's worth multiple $1 billion. And we jokingly say he's either going to be a trillionaire or he's going to go to prison because
he's so determined.
Yeah, there's just no way. And
Josh Wolf of Lux Capital has a saying: "Chips on shoulders, put chips in pockets."
Oh, that's good.
Yeah. Just this, and that it's a little bit of a pivot from the unbridled determinism, but kind of this the chip on a shoulder thing is another example of that determinism. Like, I got something to prove. I really have something to prove.
Yeah. What is the opposite of this? Like, you had a blog post I love.
And by the way, a lot of that stuff I mentioned, nowhere in there did I mention the idea, or the specific business. And we've seen incredible businesses be built by great founders who have pivoted 180 degrees from the original idea.
Yeah.
Discord's that way, for example. And Slack was famously that way. So the person matters more than the concept.
How did they know when to give up on Discord, for answer? How do you know when to give up on an idea?
I think you can reach a point where none of the math works. The team that built Nextdoor originally had built a website for sports enthusiasts, and it was out there. It had 1 million users, but based on ad rates and everything and the growth rate, it needed to be 100x bigger, and that looked impossible. And you tilt and tilt and tilt and tilt. Yeah.
So you don't want to get tied to the idea. You want to get tied to an outcome. Like,
I was fortunate to be at a place at Benchmark Capital where we were, and they still are, competing to be the best in the business.
mhm.
And the game's a little different at that level because you're looking for the grand slam home run outcomes. And you're not, it's not a game of IRR. It's not a game of, it's more like a mid-market PE where you need, you can only have one failure. The winners are so big at that level, you could have 80% of your portfolio fail. So it's a game that's a lot riskier and you're searching for the really big outcomes. So some of the decision making's different.
Yeah, it's really important to say.
Yeah.
Yeah, you don't need to have, because most people don't want that life. Most people actually want, and I imagine it's pretty miserable. I mean, we run a couple pretty big companies from our standards, and it ain't easy.
I've shared two thoughts with founders that relate to what you're saying. One, I had the unfortunate position of telling founders when they achieve some level of success that it only gets harder going up, and like it just keeps getting harder. And if you think growing $100 million company is hard, try growing $1 billion company. And the expectations go up, and the number of people whose livelihood are counting on you, the employee base goes up, and it just gets harder. And the only solace I have for them is I always tell them, if you're going to look up the ladder, make sure you look down the ladder. It's just like, make sure you celebrate how far you've moved. Because I talk to a lot of people who are probably in the top 2 percentile of all startups, and they're pretty stressed about not being, above themselves. And the other thing I tell a lot of founders, which I think may really relate with your audience, is, venture capital, it may not be a good fit for your business. And very oftentimes in venture capital, especially if you're partnering with a firm like I just described, where they're trying to have these massive outcomes, a Series A quickly becomes a Series B, quickly becomes a Series C. And before you know it, the founder's equity is down around 10% or lower. And, if you can self-fund your business, you can exit at $30 to $50 million and make lifetime wealth. But if you start down this path and get down to 10%, you now need to sell for $500 million to get that same outcome, which is a lot harder to achieve. And so, just make sure that that's what you need, and make sure that that's what you want. I actually think that there are far more companies that want to do tuck-in $30 to $50 million acquisitions than want to do $500 million. Like it's probably 100x easier to get that type of deal done.
It's a really good point. You kind of have had this history of saying some of the hard things that's not consensus in VC continuously.
Yeah.
I was going through your old blog that, you've had for 30 years, last couple of years, maybe a little bit less, but there were
definitely less.
there were like two blog posts I really, really loved. And one I remember when it came out was, it was actually about red flags in companies. And it came out like 2 weeks after FTX, basically. Yeah. So it was like incredible timing. And you basically talked about all the reasons why. And I had I have a quote in here from it that I just want to read. It was, I have over 40 years of legal and restructuring experience, never in my career seen such a complete failure of corporate controls and such a complete absence of trustworthy financial information as occurred here. And so what I would love to know from you is what are the biggest red flags in business? And what did you see in that deal that you were like, guys, how did you miss this?
Well, by the way, it's tricky because I just told you that there are firms out there that want to find the biggest grand slam home runs they possibly can. And so the best way to make sure you have exposure to as many of those as you can is to be and look as founder friendly as you possibly can. And so if you combine hyper competition at the investor level, from the time I entered the venture career to the time I left, competition only went in one direction. It increased, and it's more competitive today than ever. And if you have that hyper competition, and if the best way to ingratiate yourself to a founder and potentially get a new deal is to be as friendly as possible, you create a scenario where this is very likely to happen, like super likely to happen. And so I don't know that there's a way around it because the option is like, I think that the competitive level is so high that you're going to test this boundary constantly. Like you're just going to test the boundary. And some of the best founders are very determined. We use the word deterministic and aren't looking for constraints. And so it's kind of ripe for this to happen, you know.
That's true.
But it gets rationalized, you know. And so I was actually at a dinner with some of the FTX investors about 2 months before it blew up. And I said, and I asked all the questions that are in the red flags, and they were aware of all of those risks. But, you know, didn't have a way to manage it.
Fascinating.
Yeah.
Yeah. You know, on the other end of the
But
spectrum.
it's okay. I mean, look, it's you know, everyone's wearing their, what would you say, big boy underwear in this game. And so,
You hope.
not to, I hope that's not gender biased, but like, this is one of the reasons why there's a number of people that want to push to have everyday retail investors be able to invest in these types of companies. And this is one of the reasons why I'm somewhat like cynical about that idea, because the people that are doing this kind of know the risks they're taking, but I'm not sure that everyone would understand, including the failure rate issue. You know, these pass the hat SPVs that are happening everywhere, special purpose vehicles. You're probably aware of this. Like people are going to get burned. Like,
yeah. Well, why don't you explain a special purpose vehicle and how somebody might say they invested in SpaceX, but you know, ridiculous fees and at a wild valuation.
So let me back up for just a minute, because I think it's important to frame it. In a venture capital fund, so this is a fund that limited partners are going to invest in, which are traditionally university endowments, fellowships, that kind of thing, foundations. That venture capital firm will have an agreement with these investors that includes something called a look back. And what the look back says is, if you take money from the first 3 winners and then don't return anything else, a bunch of losers, you owe us back what was in those losers. So there's an investment agreement that kind of looks at the fund and the portfolio holistically. An SPV, special purpose vehicle, is when a investor is representing a group of other investors for a single investment, and it doesn't have a look back and there's no portfolio. And so they'll take fees, not always, but sometimes they'll take management fees and a rake, some form of carry, on this single investment. And if any VC could strike a deal with their LPs where every single investment was a SPV, they would do it. But they don't do it. And that's kind of the point. And there's a concept in gambling in Vegas called a free roll. And I often think about, from the GP's perspective, the person underwriting the SPV, the one trying to talk you into investing in it, I think they got a free roll. Because if it works, they make money. If it doesn't work and they got fees, they still make money. And they got nothing in it. Like, you know, and so the only way I would ever consider an SPV is if the underwriter is putting 50% of the money in or more, but they're probably not at all. And so, and these have become particularly popular in the last year or two. And I would just, like, it's funny, this whole AI thing, like the ups and downs that have happened, the funny thing is the best bet all along has just been the index, like the S&P index, because you were exposed to AI because NVIDIA became such a large part of it.
Or now Apple with hardware.
Yeah, you had all these big companies that were already overweighted in the index that were AI exposed. And here now, where we have the fear of AI starting to cause valuations to crumble, the S&P has performed pretty well. And if you're sitting there holding a basket of like high tech new companies, you got wiped out in the past 3 months.
I was looking at the numbers like a couple days ago, and, we've seen massive January layoffs. We've seen like some of the worst jobs numbers since 2009. We've seen like decreasing non-farm payroll numbers since basically 2022. We've seen like, decrease in overall job creation in the US.
Yeah.
And so I think people right now are saying, oh my God,
They are.
Forget doing what I want for a living. Am I going to have a job?
Yes.
And you have such a history with these tech companies. Like, one, I guess I would say, how could somebody find a career right now that is safe? Is there a way even?
So if you look before AI, there was a Gallup poll in 2023, and it's only 23% of people identified as engaging and satisfied at work. 59% did not. And the other 19 are like actively unhappy at work. And I think that's interesting, and I look at what we've done with the traditional career path, and we've created this conveyor belt from, it starts really early. I think it starts about 6th grade, where parents start worrying about their kids' college application. And Jonathan Haidt calls it the resume arms race. And we just start packing it full of extra credit classes and cello lessons and lacrosse lessons and all this stuff. And, when I was younger, like, our parents would let us like roam the city for days and not know where we were. It was just a totally different time. But these kids are so pushed into this pressure cooker. And then they get into college and then you got to get a job. And I think well-intentioned parents are pushing kids towards these safe jobs. And I've raised 3 children, and I can tell you the intuition to do that is really strong. Mm-hmm. It's just like built into your DNA. I don't think it's no malintent whatsoever. You just want them to be okay. You want them to be fine. And so over the past 30 years, that's been, make them a banker, make them a computer scientist, make them a consultant. And these jobs happen to be under AI threat. But I think people weren't happy before that. And I'd like to, if you'd allow me, because I think the AI thing is super interesting, I'd like to juxtapose 2 things for you. One, if you are accepting this kind of conveyor belt process where you're going to go exactly in line with how you're told, how everybody else is doing it. You're going to go be a computer scientist at the best school. You're going to interview with the companies that come there. So you're you're doing what you're told, and you're following where they've told you to go. I think those people, AI is a huge threat, because they're like, they don't really know why they're there. They just showed up and they were told to do this, and there's 100 other people around them that look just like them, and they're all interviewing for the same job, and they're not differentiated, and it's scary as all get out. Now, I want to juxtapose that with, let's say you're somebody that has an immense passion for something that's very bespoke, where they're out running in their own lane and trying to chart their own course. For that individual, is AI a threat or is it a jetpack? I actually think it's a jetpack, because now I can go learn about anything I want. I can go study about anything I want. It's never been easier to learn faster because of this tool called AI. I can build things with less people. I can write code. I can do videos. And so if you're your own champion and you're in your own lane, I think AI is a superpower. But it's an interesting juxtaposition, right? Like, is it a threat or is it a help? And I think it's kind of dependent on the game you're playing.
I actually haven't thought about it that way, but it makes all the sense in the world. You can almost feel the people who are excited by AI because they want to practically apply it right now, immediately to something.
Yeah.
And the people who just think, oh, Lord, I used to do X task. Now somebody else is going to do the task.
Right. There's a funny story that I think is relevant, which I think it was Bjorn Borg. There was a tennis player who retired very early. I think it was Bjorn Borg. And when he retired was the kind of final years of the wooden tennis racket. And he decided to make a comeback. I hope it was him. I hope I got the name right. And about 5 years later, and everyone had switched to these big graphite rackets, and he refused to use one because he was used to the tool he had, and he got obliterated. Like, wasn't even close. And, you know, there are many anthropologists that have studied the fact that humans evolve with their tools. And so you could, you know, who's more fit, you know, someone in Naked and Afraid, or someone, you know, with a bulldozer and a calculator and a computer. Like, it's pretty obvious, right? And this tool has come along very quickly, AI, and it has capabilities that really matter to make a human more fit, more kind of evolutionarily fit. And if you don't lean into it and figure out how it can most impact the career you're in, you're more likely to be susceptible to being displaced.
Yeah.
Like, the best anecdote is to run at it, like to play with it all the time.
Yeah. I liked that line you have. I think you had a line basically at that, like, you have to become the most aggressive user of AI in your field, run at it. Because that's how you keep evolving.
No doubt.
Which I love. Well, so
and by the way, that'll be true of the next disruptive technology as well.
This doesn't feel like you've seen every technology that, you know, has probably felt this way to the masses over the last 30 years. Does this feel different to you?
It feels a little different, I think, because it threatens white collar workers so fast. Like, I think a lot of the waves before, so I mean, you go way back to just automation in factories and the agriculture, what happened to agriculture with the rise of machines. And look, you know, I think in the U.S. used to be 98% agriculture at the top, and it's like less than 2% now. So we've survived these things, like, they happen. But this one's unique, I think. And that's why it's created so much anxiety.
I love Bill's takes on how to find our best careers, because I just read this crazy statistic that by 2030, up to 30% of current jobs could be automated. McKinsey says as many as 375 million workers may need to switch occupations. And Goldman says AI could impact 300 million full-time roles. Here's what no one wants to admit. It's not the robots that win, it's the owners of attention. So when distribution gets automated, when content gets generated, when noise goes infinite, the scarce asset isn't actually skill, it's taste and audience. If you don't own your audience, you rent your income, and rent goes up. That's why I've been thinking a lot about email lately. Not the boring kind, the kind that turns ideas into movements, which brings me to something I've been using behind the scenes, Beehive. Beehive is this all-in-one platform for building, growing, making money on your newsletter. But here's what actually matters. It's built for people who already create. So you can publish, you can grow with built-in referral tools and recommendations, you can monetize from day one, like ads, subscriptions, boosts, without stitching together 5 different tools. You own the audience. No algorithms deciding whether your work gets seen and whether those closest to you actually hear from you. Solo creators are turning newsletters into 6- and 7-figure businesses. I turned mine into, some ways you could say, a 9-figure business. If AI is going to commoditize content, then the move is obvious. Build the list. Own the relationship. If you're already creating, or you know you should be, you can actually go to beehive.com. I asked them for a code for us. It's BEEHIIV.com. And then you can use code CODIE30 for 30% off for 3 months. I don't think we should wait for the future. We should own something.
What are the skills you need to have to win in the age of AI in your mind?
Immense curiosity, because you have to play with this thing. And, you've got to get over the skepticism. I've met some really intelligent people. Some of the top academics that I happen to have relationships with, who are just doubters. You know, they get it to hallucinate once, and then they run around and tell everybody about how it gave them the wrong answer. And boy, that's dangerous. Like, it's just so dangerous to walk around being skeptical in that way.
Yeah.
I think it's far too powerful to be that way. But I see it. I see it a lot.
Yeah, Greg Brockman, I think, had a tweet today that I liked, which is said that, like, taste is now a real skill. And I feel that a little bit. I saw this graph. I should have brought it for you that I thought was really good. But it was basically like a little, fourplex. And in the bottom, it was like bad judgment, good judgment. And then non-AI use, AI use, or high AI use. And and then it said basically, if you have bad judgment and AI use, slop cannon. You create a lot of really bad things. Good judgment, lot of AI use, sort of superhuman. You know, you create incredible things. Yeah. And I've been thinking about that lately because I felt it. We did this job posting, Bill, and I was like, we're hiring sort of vibe coders. We're hiring them in every single department. We're hiring engineers as well, but we already have engineers that we've been hiring. I've never hired this person that's just like AI curious. And we get thousands of applications for it, right? But then as I'm going through it, I'm like, wow, people have built a lot of stuff, but a lot of it is a questionable choice of what you are building and how and why. And that product is actually really terrible from a UI perspective, right?
Yeah.
So I'd be curious for you, like in this world, it does seem like you have to really have taste about what you build and why too. Do you think that's true? And if so, how do you tell if somebody has it or not?
Yeah, I mean, it may be that both relationships and taste become even more important because of the volume of information that can be created could create more noise. One thing I would really tell people, and you've probably been down this path yourself, but like the more you use AI, the more you understand and intuitively have a feel for what it's capable of, and then the more you push it and into places you might not have thought about before.
Yeah.
And I'm surprised. I was surprised yesterday, like, oh, wow, it figured that out. Yeah. And if you're not playing with it every day, not only do you not know what it's capable of, but you're not developing your skills to get it to be as good as it can possibly be for you. Like there is an element, people used the phrase prompt engineering before, but I think it's more than that. I think it's having awareness of when it might help you and knowing you can go to it more often.
Yeah, that's a good point. Yeah, I guess it's almost like you'll see an expert with all the ways they know how to utilize a tool, any type of tool.
No doubt. And the stuff that came out in the past 2 weeks, which I haven't played with yet, or even more of that.
That's my existential
I haven't
drag.
built a claw bite yet, but probably should.
My president just did, and he came in wild-eyed yesterday. He's like, I've been working on it for the 4th day. I didn't sleep last night. I'm like,
I love that.
But me too. And you know what? He's the former president of Mr. Beast. He's a super successful guy. He makes a ton of money. He's built a lot of companies.
Yeah.
And yet even he is so curious about what's happening.
Yeah, and you were asking about the elements of a great founder, like that part's in there. They can't stand, they have immense FOMO about new technologies. That's
a great line. Chris Sacca had said something really interesting about you, totally off the AI subject. But Chris Sacca said that when you are in a meeting, you will be sitting there silent for most of the meeting. And then you'll say like 10 poignant words that will change the trajectory of the entire meeting. And you're a humble guy and you didn't even want to write like a memoir. You wanted to write something to help people. So I'm sure you hear that quote and you're like, whatever, Chris. But
no, that's not my reaction. Go ahead and finish the question.
But my question is like, you're in rooms with these power players all over the world. You're in rooms with other big investors, all your partners at Benchmark. How do you make your words count? How do you get heard by people?
By the way, that thing Chris described is a evolved skill, not something that came naturally. And if you read, the stories of the elders, the great early venture capitalists, you'll find a mention of that precise technique. And I probably read those early on, and it's hard. Like it's super hard. Like the human wants to blurt out the best answer first. And there's this sales tool, Gong, that they use to record salespeople and then see. I wish every board meeting had a Gong recorder and then immediately posted a pie chart of who talked the most. I wish. I've never said that out loud before.
That's a great feature.
But I would love to see that because I think it would encourage more people to do what you just described. And it's super effective. It's just very hard to do. It's very hard to bite your tongue. And the other benefit of waiting till the end is you're going to have more information. You're going to synthesize, while you prepare to say what you're going to say. And it's going to be more efficient, obviously, if you say less. It turns out it's also more impactful for the reasons you just described.
Yeah, well, we were talking about Rick Rubin before we started.
Yeah.
And I'm obsessed with this one line of his, which is that he is not a producer, he's a reducer.
Yeah.
He's always trying to get it down to the core.
Yeah.
And that reminds me of you in this way in meetings. And I know you said you spent time with Rick. What did you take away from him? Was there a story that you were like, God, this is so good, I want to go home and tell my wife?
I was kind of on pins and needles going in, because I hold Rick in this really special place in my brain because of how unique an individual he is and how different he is. And I'm a huge music fan, and all the different genres he's touched and made magic with. It's clear there's something special there. And then you read his book; it's not written like any other book that's ever been written. It's Yoda-esque. It's really small words put together that are profound, but not obvious in how to interpret. And, some people have told me they've read Rick's book like a fourth time. Like, I think it may need that, like, to soak in. So I was so thrilled to be there. And, I'd watched the documentary about the studio. There's a 4-part documentary. And so just being there was, super special to me. Yeah. And I was so in awe. Maybe the whole thing felt like the answer to your question was every single second of being around him. I'm that much of a fanboy, but it was great. He was so prepared. When I was writing the book, I was very curious why I did the podcast, because here's a guy that's remarkably successful in his field, probably arguably the best of all time, but certainly top 5 producer of all time. And he does a podcast, not just with music people or even Hollywood. It's much broader than that. And I remember listening to him talk to Jay Bhattacharya, and I'm like, this is insane. Like this is amazing. And I asked him, why do you do it? And he said, it's all about curiosity, like just scratching itches and learning as a hobby. And I think that's profound. Like, I really do. I think that the best and the brightest, there's a recent podcast, I forget who did it with him, with Toby of Shopify. And if Toby talks, anywhere publicly, I consume it within 24 hours. I just find him so wonderful and so fascinating. And in this particular one, someone asked him, like, what's the easiest life hack of all? And he said, read. Like, read. Like, don't stop reading. He goes, people write down stuff that they've learned over a lifetime, and you can consume it in a day. Like, that's so easy. You should do it all the time. And Buffett has said similar things. It's profound. The learning tools are unlike they've ever been. And that's why I go back to what I said earlier. If you're on a self-directed path, where you're trying to be, I have a phrase in the book, a candidate of one, where you want to look like a individual, and how you know the lane you're in, where you're headed toward, and you want to add to yourself more learning about where you're headed. There's never been a better time. Like, in the history of the world, there's never been a better time. It is, it's insane, the opportunity that's out there for you.
Well, I loved a lot of what you said in the book about finding mentors. So that's a question, if anybody who's on the internet a lot, people ask, how do you find mentors? It's a big question. I've actually never thought about it. Have you ever called anybody your mentor?
Yes.
Did you ask them? Were they like, were you like, will you be my mentor?
No, I don't think it went down in that way. I didn't say, will you be my mentor?
Is that a good question to ask? Should somebody ask somebody?
Probably not. Like, I don't think you should use it. It's a very heavy sounding ask, I think, and so I'll give your listeners a cheat. I still hope they buy the book, but I'll give them, like, my first thing on mentors is, take the people overshoot. They try and go too high. Like, and so I think it's awesome to identify the people in the field you're going to go after that you hold in highest regard and respect the most. Call those your aspirational mentors. Create a file, in whatever digital folder type thing you like to use, Notion or Google Docs or whatever. Create a file for each one of them and study them relentlessly. Find every podcast they've been on, find every YouTube, any interview you can find, anything they've written, put it in the file. Like keep it like a little journal of yours for each one of them. One day you may meet them, and the fact that you've done all that work will make you much more likely to be able to engage with them. But you're going to learn so much along that way. So the ones you thought you were going to cold call, don't do that. Do what I just said. And then for the ones you're going to actually try and meet, just go down a few levels. Like if you go down a few levels, you're going to be asking someone for advice that's never been asked for advice before. And they're going to be flattered that you're doing it, that you know who they are, that you found who they were, and that you respect what they've achieved. You're going to be the first person that's asked them that. And because of that, they're going to be responsive. And so people overshoot. That's a great way to kind of divide the world into two parts. And one day, who knows, when the first profile in my book is Danny Meyer, who's a close personal friend and one of the most wonderful humans I've ever met. For those that don't know, Danny's one of the top restaurateurs in New York, maybe the top, most people would say. Andy created Shake Shack. That's how most listeners would probably know him. But when Danny decided, and he had this intent, and it was in a single moment at a dinner one night to go be a restaurateur, he made a list of the 10 people he respected most that were changing the restaurant industry. And he did exactly what I said. He studied them. He kept a folder on them. And when I was preparing to give the talk at the University of Texas that was the precursor to this book, I called Danny because I just thought about this before I was about to go give this speech. I said, "Did you ever meet any of those 10 people?" And he sent me the 100 emoji. So he ended up meeting all of them, which is awesome, right? And as someone who climbed the ladder in their field, I will tell you, like, meeting or perhaps even impressing those people that you put on that initial list is a truly amazing, fulfilling life experience. Like, it's really cool when that happens,
It's incredible advice, and I don't think it's given enough.
Yeah. I have this other thing in the book that I feel compelled to share that gives me goosebumps the first time I saw it. When Anthony Hopkins watched Breaking Bad, he sent Bryan Cranston this letter about how impressed he was. And I don't know if enough people do that enough, but I can't imagine that any Oscar or Emmy felt as good as getting that letter from Sir Anthony Hopkins. You know what I'm saying?
It's a great point.
It just, the weight that must carry to have someone at the top of your field tell you that you did something amazing. And it costs nothing, right? So
no, but it's so important because I think these days, like what I see a lot of people doing is everybody, when they try to get mentors, they go really wide. They try to go talk to everybody who's famous or well-known or at the top of the game, but they're really narrow in what they know about them. And you're saying, do the opposite, go really deep with few. And then on top of that, it's kind of like job searching. It's like, try to go get every job in the world, apply 1,000 times. You see that on X, they'll say, well, I've been out of a job for 6 months and I've applied to, 1,000 places. But it seems to me like going deeper and more sniper rifle as opposed to shotgun works better in most things in life. And you could even I loved the story you told about Bob Dylan and his mentor even, and what he did to track down one guy. And this is Bob Dylan. Like, if Bob Dylan has to do it, what do we have to do?
Yeah. And by the way, this is another area where, like, if you're playing around with AI, you're going to learn like everything it's capable of. And if you're meeting any human and you haven't done a pro, search of everything that's possibly out there on them so you can know as much about them before you meet them, you're just not doing it right.
It's true. But you know what's crazy? Don't you find most people still don't?
Yeah, I think most people don't. But I think that in the future, you will, listen to a podcast on your way to work where your AI is telling you everything you possibly need to know about everyone you're going to meet that day. I think that that certainly will happen.
I talk a lot about owning stuff, businesses, assets, your time, but owning your privacy matters too. So right now, your personal info is being bought and sold online without you ever opting in. Old addresses, family names, phone numbers, it's all floating around. That's not great, especially if you're building something or simply don't want random people knowing where you live. That's why I like Incogni. They reach out to data brokers and get your personal info removed. And they keep doing it because new sites pop up all the time. It's super simple. You sign up, you say what you want removed, they take care of it. And if there's something specific you want off the internet, custom removals covers that too. My rule is pretty simple. If I wouldn't give it to a stranger, I don't want it online. They can't harm you if they can't find you. So check it out at incogni.com/bigdeal.
I want some Bill Gurley predictions. Like, what do we think? What do you think? What are some crazy, spiky predictions you have for the next year or two about tech and just the world?
I think this, I think everyone is finally now, I think Clawbot actually helped finally push us towards this, this kind of personal assistant concept, this AI thing that's like your running buddy that I really think most people want, you know. And there's all kind of questions about privacy and how much you share and whether that gets shared beyond. Like, I get it, like, but I think people are going to want this so bad. You know, I missed it. I was late to a meeting yesterday because I tried to call like 3 or 4 people and they said, "Oh, today's a holiday." And so I just got lulled into thinking there was nothing on my calendar. And then I was late to this thing, and I was thinking this morning, like, someone should have started pinging any channel I have, you know, especially like if I'm not moving, like someone should know if I'm not moving, I'm going to be late to this thing. Like, and it could ping me and tell me, and it will, like that's coming. Like, that's going to happen, like, for sure.
I totally agree. Okay. So we're going to have relentless little AI reminders and assistants.
I think so.
What else do you think?
I mean, it's so hard to see the future right now because of everything's possible and anything's possible. And, you know, I think there will be vertical models that get really good in very specific places, health. I mean, the ones people are leaning on the hardest are legal and health and coding right now, but I think it'll happen in many, many, many fields as people figure out what's capable, what's possible. You know, I think fixing certain industries will not go as fast as you would want because of things like regulatory capture that make it very hard for innovation to thrive. Healthcare is a good example of that.
What else do you think that other people might disagree with you about? What else do you like? I
can give
disagree.
you an easy one on that. There's a competitive dynamic in China right now on AI models that includes open source. And I don't think the world, especially the politicians, understand how, like, unbelievably powerful open source is as a weapon, like as a competitive weapon. And if you have 10 companies all doing open source, the minute an idea is shared, it's available to the other 10. And they absorb it immediately. And it just creates this dynamic that's hyper competitive. It doesn't mean, when I say it's hyper competitive, that also means it's less likely to create wealth because, but it's a form. There's a phrase in economics called pure competition that you can look up on Wikipedia or whatever, and you'll study it if you get a finance degree. But in pure competition, no one has an edge. Marginal cost moves to marginal price. It's great for consumers. Consumers end up with the lowest price point. And some would argue it's the ideal goal of capitalism, you know, to get the lowest price to the lowest, you know, for the consumer, and prosperity thrives. I actually agree with that. But open source is hyper competitive compared to a situation where people are only playing with proprietary models. And so, you know, people say we're 6 months ahead or 3 months ahead. I think the odds that, you know, the U.S. with 2 proprietary models can stay ahead of China with 10 open source ones is very low.
Fascinating. So what do we do about that?
Well, here's what I fear we're going to do about it is, this is really off the subject, but what I fear we're going to do is the two leading players will recognize the threat and weaponize regulation, which is what they started doing 3 years ago. But no one's funding more lobbyists begging for AI regulation than Anthropic themselves, and they'll use that to try and deal with the threat. What's really going to be interesting is the rest of the world. So for the past 100 years, I think the U.S. has considered rest of the world their market, and that's true in industrial type products, but it's certainly true in technology. And if you look at the internet, China kind of had a fence around it, and the rest of the world used the U.S. products. They used Google and Amazon and Uber and all these things. And if we pull up this huge regulatory wall, it may be the U.S. that has the fence around it this time. It's going to be really interesting. Copyright's a super fascinating thing. Like if the Chinese models don't protect copyright and the U.S. ones are forced to, what does the rest of the world do? Do we go to the EU and say, you can't use Chinese models, they don't respect copyright? And how will the EU respond? I don't know.
Yeah, it's fascinating because I did see some of your tweets on even IP and, no patents, no copyrights, and how in some ways that would be better for the world.
I think it would be. This is very controversial, by the way, but I do.
Well, explain why it's controversial. And even you could steel man it. Like Walt Disney would be like, hey, Bill, fuck you.
Yeah, I think copyright lands harder in people's brain because they think about it as an artist, individual creativity, and that hits people emotionally.
Yep.
Patents, in the U.S. have been systematically abused, and you could just go talk to AI about it. How do, pharma companies use rolling innovation to extend patent life, way beyond what the original intent was? And it happens constantly. And people will say, oh, but if you don't have patents, you won't have innovation. And I just don't believe it. Partially because, our firm was lucky enough to be an investor in Red Hat. So we've been investing in open source companies for 25 years. And, there are plenty of people who want to innovate who don't need the government protecting their innovation. Tesla has famously open sourced all their patents, as an example. And I'm fairly certain that Elon agrees with me on this point, but I think we're two pretty lone wolves on this topic. But
what about name and likeness and, that in the age of AI? Because so much of AI is just trained on art, let's say.
Look, I recognize the copyright thing, really gets people's skin up. And I would just say, a 17-year patent is way too far. We need to dial it back. I think that we will innovate faster without it. But the other way you get there is hyper competition that pushes you to open source. And it's fascinating. I visited China in August, and I was doing research for that trip, and I went back, and the previous 5-year plan, China notoriously publishes these 5-year plans that are pushed to the provinces to encourage them. Here's the things that the higher ups are interested in, and open source was in the one 5 years ago. I think that China has been accused of being a IP thief for a long time, so it's very natural that they would see open source as a great place to run towards, and they have. And I think people may be making a mistake in not understanding why that might actually be the right perspective for a country to want to embrace.
Yeah. You told a story that I thought was fascinating about.
And by the way, I think you end up in a better position globally from a competitive standpoint because that hyper innovation that comes from all those open source sharing just moves your products faster forward. And I'm not convinced, we're getting into really esoteric concepts.
That's good.
I'm not convinced that having large market cap companies is necessarily a massive advantage,
Yeah. Well, I think that's,
And it could be a sign of monopoly, right? Which,
I think that's very reasonable.
yeah.
Well, I have a question on that. Like, one of the things that I love in your book and what you've talked about, and really some of the ethos in Silicon Valley is like collaboration instead of competition.
Yeah.
So like I come from a private equity background where, we just steamrolled everybody and we competed with everybody. And it was a lot of zero-sum games. I buy this company or you buy this company and you lose if I win.
Yeah.
And then I had to lose that sort of when we started investing in venture. And I definitely had to lose that when I got on the internet because it's I've realized collaboration works a lot more.
Yeah.
But I'm curious, you're still a competitive guy. Like you're a former, basketball player.
Yeah.
You're competing in deals. So like, should you try to crush your competition or should you work with them?
Well, the advice in the book, most of it that gets into this topic you're hitting on is in a chapter called Embrace Your Peers. And it's probably my favorite principle in the book, but mainly because I think it's the most unique of all the points that I make. And I found some amazing stories that I share in the book that you can go read. But like I found that far too often humans, and I'm not talking about companies, I'm not saying companies need to have friends, but like they probably do, but humans, when they're out trying to climb up the ladder, would do themselves a massive advantage if they would embrace a group of peers. So finding 5 to 10 other people who are climbing the same ladder you are and share, collaborate, and support one another. And you learn faster. Your network is bigger because it's not just your network; it's the group's network. If it's authentic, they will be there for you on the hard days, and that will really matter. Like that will really, really matter. Like in ways that's if you haven't been through it, it's really hard to say how big a deal that is. And you'll have fun, and you'll one way to know if you're really doing it right, when they win, you're sincerely happy for them. Like you really are. And if you can get in touch with that emotion, your odds of success are going to go way up, but I think you're going to enjoy the journey a lot more too. I really do. And in most fields, like not downhill ski racing, but in every other field, there are a lot of winners. There just are a lot of winners. You're not supporting this other person isn't crowding out a position for you. But I think a lot of us are taught to think that way.
It's a good way to ponder, because I think even as I've climbed to whatever level I'm at, you also know the people who are anti-competitive or who are anti-collaborative and who aren't actually wishing
I'd
you the best.
stay away from those people.
Yeah.
I'll be outspoken. There are sharp-elbowed people in this world, and you can feel them a mile away, and let them be them. I don't think you need to be antagonistic or do anything about it. Don't let them in your peer group.
Yeah.
Don't even invite them.
Which kind of goes to show that if you are the collaborative one, you might win even more than the really good competitive one.
Yes.
Because they don't want to let them in.
Yeah. And look, I think I'm all about competing and winning and thriving. I don't want it to sound like I'm not, but your odds of getting from the bottom rung to the top rung go way up if you're willing to share the ride and share your best ideas. That's the other thing. And one thing I definitely have learned over 30 years of working in business, this thought that you have this unique idea in your head that no one else does is far-fetched. It really is. And walking around thinking that is not helpful.
What's the worst thing somebody can say in a pitch to you?
That was a bit of a orthogonal question.
Well, my thought process was.
Yeah, tell me that. That'll be helpful.
You hear ideas every day. And I bet you often hear, this is revolutionary. You've never heard this before. Let me tell you this idea for this business. And you're like, well, that was the 42nd pitch I've heard on this same idea, which is probably why you come to think that no ideas are unique.
Yes, that's for sure. And I've also watched founders kind of get really bogged down in a ditch thinking someone, invaded their space and stole their stuff. And I don't think it's helpful to them moving forward. And I don't even think it's true. I think it's pretty, here's a great example. Do you think there'll be a new age CRM built around AI that'll start from zero, code and will be better than Salesforce.com, and it won't evolve from all those fields, but it'll evolve in a different way? 100%. And there's probably 20 founders doing it, right? I don't know which one will win, but the odds that I thought of that first is like, that's silly. It's silly to walk around with that notion. It's funny with the thing that I thought of when you ask about the founders. I was watching American Idol last night. I've watched it since season 1. It's like it's my guilty pleasure. It's like my Hallmark channel. But they've really got into over dramatizing these journeys that they have. And some founders have started putting that in the front of their pitch. Like, my mom almost died, and that's the reason I'm starting this thing. And it gets a little cringy, That's not the worst thing, but I think you really start the meeting off poorly if that seems insincere, especially if you're telling a story that's that heavy. And so I started an accounting software practice. You know what I'm saying?
So the total addressable market is.
No, I'm just saying they're not connected,
That's amazing.
Be authentic. Be authentic. Don't be inauthentic.
You have a lot of stories, I think, that kind of show how most of these people who win are authentically obsessed with whatever it is they're doing. And you told this story about there was like a Steve Jobs of China and a ridiculous thing he did with Post-it notes on his employees' cars.
Yeah.
You tell that story because I was like, that is a perfect example of obsession.
Yeah, you're talking about Lei Jun. So Lei Jun is the founder of Xiaomi. And as I go into the story, I'm going to share with you something a famous and very successful Chinese venture capitalist told me on my last trip. He said, every single founder and venture capitalist in China studies the U.S. relentlessly. They watch the YouTube interviews, they listen to the podcasts, they study them like crazy. He said, founders and VCs in America don't study Chinese. And that's a profound statement, right? Like, just even thinking about that's pretty profound. So in that spirit, I would encourage everyone to go watch I think it's the 2025 Lei Jun State of the Union on Xiaomi, which is translated on YouTube. Because that's where I got this data from. But it's worth watching because he's as good as Toby. And I fortunately met him about 20 years ago, and this is his third company since then. But about 10 years ago, he decided to build a phone, which isn't easy. And it's now the third best-selling handset in the world, Xiaomi. And then about 5 years ago, when Apple was thinking about building a car, he decided to build a car. And that car is now in production, sold out. There are some amazing reviews online of Americans who have gotten a hold of the car, including the CEO of Ford. So you can go watch those and read those to get a sense of this guy. But in that State of the Union, he tells the story you talked about, where once he decided to build a car, he took a first shot at it and realized it wasn't special, and then he backed up. And some of this talk comes from the backup and reapproach it. But he decided that he wanted to drive every car he possibly could to get experience. And because he had been driven around by a driver, which is very common in China. And so he went through the parking lot of his employees, and if there was a car he had never driven before, he put a Post-it note on it that said, I want you to tell me the 3 things you like about your car and the 3 things you hate, and I want you to let me drive it. And he claims he did this for like 250 cars in his parking lot.
So interesting.
And when you hear a story like that, you could be cynical and say, well, maybe he made that up, like it's a founding story and it's super compelling. But maybe he actually did it. And maybe he was a first principle learner, going after this new thing. And the irony is that's an activity that anyone at GM or Ford or Chrysler or whatever could have done and probably haven't.
No
right?
chance.
Like this kind of base rate, start at zero kind of thing. And when you see that, there's a notion that I get accused of being like an agent of the CCP sometimes, just because I try and be eyes wide open. I'm not trying to be on anybody's side. But when you meet someone like Lejeune and see that, and then you hear this idea, oh, the Chinese are just copycats, they're not innovators. It's just not true. Like, it's just flat out not true.
Now, having been to
if
China,
you see these reviews of this car and you see the founding principles at work inside of Lejeune's head, he's special. He's very, very special. Every bit as special as Toby or Steve Jobs or Jeff Bezos. And it's valuable to know that, like, as opposed to sticking your head in the sand and not knowing that. Like,
of course.
Yeah.
And also, I mean, if you haven't been to China, but once you've been there, I mean, I remember I first went there like probably like 15 years ago. And I remember back then thinking the light shows were crazy that they had over, there was whatever the main thing is in Shanghai, where they have like the kind of, it's European, bund. Right.
Yes.
It's European on one side and the bund is on the other. And I had to live there for a few months. It was not my favorite place to live 15 years ago. It was really polluted back then. But
it's very different today.
Yeah. But even then, I remember thinking, no, this isn't copying. I mean, this thing's different here, just in the same way you feel, I think, if you go into Japan for different reasons.
No doubt.
But it kind of has this idea that I really liked from you too, which is, have you ever seen I can't remember who said it, but that was a basketball player. And he was like, you don't get paid for the game. You get paid to practice.
Yeah.
Like, the game is the reward. The practice is what the pay is for.
Yeah.
And then you have a quote in here, which is that the will to win is not nearly as important as the will to prepare to win, from Bobby Knight.
Yeah.
And so I want your take on preparation. Like, how important is it? Do most people do it? And how should you prepare
there's
to win?
an anecdote in the book that Kobe Bryant, after winning, I think, his fourth championship and third MVP. I'm probably getting those wrong. It might be a different number, but some ungodly level of success in that offseason, reached out to Hakeem Olajuwon and asked if he could come to Houston. So not only did he ask, but I'm coming to you to learn Hakeem's footwork in the post. So this is a guy, unbelievable forward, easily could be a point guard, but he's now going to add to his game the ability to do these post moves. And he went down there and did it. And the press showed up and they interviewed Olajuwon about it and all, but it's a powerful statement that someone with that much success was trying to find an area of where they could improve and was willing to kind of go to that length to go figure it out. And I ask anyone who's chasing any career, are you like that? Do you go home and learn on your own time in your field? And I think a lot of young adults who go through this system, which I don't like, and I think has gotten perverse. Do you learn at home on your own time? And I don't think the answer is yes. And I think it's partially because they've been through such a pressure cooker and grinder that they want to believe, oh, it's over. Man, I'm glad that's over. Like, oh, I'm going to go get a job. That learning's over. And when learning feels forced, it's not fun, and it is a grind. We had a chance working on the book to talk to Angela Duckworth, and 10 years after she released Grit, which said it's 50% perseverance and 50% passion, she said if she could do it over again, she'd weight passion way more highly than perseverance, because we've taught young adults to grind. We've taught them how to grind. They're the Eagle Scout and the 1,500 plus SAT and they just, achievement, volunteer. But we didn't allow, we took away the opportunity to explore and learn and discover and find what they love. And when you love something, like I got to believe Kobe did playing basketball, that that decision to go do the Olajuwon thing didn't feel like work. And I'm coming back to your point about will to practice. Like if you adore something like Danny does restaurant, we talked to Danny last year, finishing up the book. I was working with a co-writer and researcher. That's why I keep saying we. And he was just coming back from a trip to Europe with all his top chefs. Like they went to all the new top, Michelin places and took copious notes, and like a learning journey. Like he's still doing it, and I don't think that's possible if you don't adore the field you're in. Like if you don't have this immense emotional connection to what it is, you don't study it at home. And one of the things that became quite aware to me, especially when we translated this from just a video presentation, a book, and did a whole bunch of research, we probably read 100 more biographies. The people that are wildly successful, they do this like intuitively, like they're just out learning constantly about what's new in their field. And it doesn't feel like work. It feels like fun. And the other thing I would say that's also something we discovered in the book, a lot of people turn hobbies into careers. Like, because that's the thing. The hobby's the thing they're studying for fun. And one thing I hope with this book is that it gives more people the permission to go do the crazy thing they love. Because I think the system doesn't want to support that for well-intentioned purposes, but I think they're going to be more fulfilled and they're going to impact more people if they go give that a shot. I really do.
It's so good. It's also so contagious when you feel another obsessed person.
No doubt.
And for some reason we were sold this lie that, oh, why don't you just take some time off? Why don't you have work-life balance? Why don't you go do something not related to what you do? Well, if you're actually really into what you do, that sounds so uninteresting to me. You know what I find so uninteresting? Just any movie, anything on Netflix, going out and drinking and partying because I want to forget my life and what reality is. It's so uninteresting. But if I didn't get lucky enough in many ways to do things that I love to do, I bet I would find all those things really interesting.
Yeah. Well, look, I mean, I kind of have two reactions to this. One, I don't want to condemn people. Like it may be that you just have this perfect family life, this incredible church community. You may truly love those things so much and feel that's not a career, and that you're going to do your best in your job and then get home and love those things. And I don't want to condemn that path. I really don't. But I think far too few people look at their career as something they could love. Yeah. And so that's what I'm after. Like if you have an inkling, like if you just have this suspicion, maybe I should be doing something else, try my book. Like I want to offer an alternative door for you to think about, But
don't you also, I think we also have to be honest with people about, like, have you ever met somebody that was semi-curious and not obsessed, but won in huge 3 standard deviation ways?
No.
So it's like, you're not condemning it at all by saying live a beautiful life where work isn't the center of it. No problem.
Right.
But don't assume you're going to go become a world changer.
No, you should assume that this other person we're describing is competing with you.
Oh, good. Yeah, that's scary.
That's what you should assume. This study, you mentioned like watching Netflix. I think it's like a really interesting test of whether you've identified this thing you should go chase. Would you study it instead of binge watching Breaking Bad? Like, does it compete with that on that level? For the person in your shop that played with Clawbot until all night, the answer is obviously yes. Yeah. Right. And so it's a great way to test whether you've found, and that's the first principle in the book. It's the hardest part, like just knowing what it is.
That is hard.
I think it's the hardest part.
I only have a few more questions, but one of them, I have we hear a lot this idea of like the young you were in a movie about it. It was like, young founder, crazy, out to change the world. And sometimes I think people feel like it's too late. Like, what if there's somebody listening right now that's like, I'm mid-career. Like, I don't know if I can just go do what I love, Bill. Like, must be nice you and Cody talking about this.
Well,
not for me.
Yeah,
What would you say?
Well, I have two reactions to it. One, Daniel Pink wrote this great book about regrets. And one thing that he has studied academically, and not just in the U.S., across tons of different geographies, people as they get older, the thing that causes them the most rumination and anxiety is regrets of inaction. They don't regret the mistakes. Humans are remarkably forgiving to themselves. Oh, took a wrong turn, learned a lesson, never do that again. Like, they don't dwell on it. But the thing they never tried, they dwell on. And the older they get, he has this great graph, the older they get, the more it weighs on them. So if you can keep that in your brain, there's a great video you can go see of Bezos talking about being in Central Park, thinking about whether he should go start this online bookstore or not. And he came up with what he said it was nerdy, but he admitted it anyway, called the regret minimization framework, where he imagined himself being 80 and used that to reflect on the decision. And I think it's awesome. Like, one of the ways I walked away from 2 successful jobs in pursuit of my dream job was saying to myself, do I want to be doing this 30 years from now? So that's my first thing I would tell them. Maybe go read Daniel's book and like get in touch with, are you sure you don't ever want to do this? And then the second thing I would say is there's a special chapter in the book for these people called Never Too Late. And I walk through, I give an example of about 20 people that started really late in life, but I walk through 4 examples, including our fellow Austinite, Mr. Bert Beveridge, better known as Tito, that had been a seismologist and a mortgage broker and started thinking about launching a spirit company at the age of 40. And is the most successful spirit in North America today.
And I have a bunch of friends that are friends with him. I'm not friends with him, but they just say he's an incredible human who's super obsessed with his craft, like to this day, even though he sold, didn't he?
No,
he still
not
owns
only
it.
did he not sell, this would be great for your audience. He's 100% of the equity cap table.
I do love that. I do love that. And I've never raised capital for this company. And the other day, somebody asked me why. We get approached, whatever. And somebody asked me why. And I said, like, I have my friend Dino, who runs a company called Saronic. They're building ports and autonomous ships.
I'm familiar with the company.
Yeah, of course he's got to go raise a bunch of venture capital because he is building these huge things that could change, infrastructure trajectory.
Yeah.
The cool thing about media companies is this is just another type of leverage.
Yeah.
And so I could put capital leverage on top of what we're doing, but all the infrastructure is already built. I don't have to build a port.
Yeah.
Zuckerberg built it for me. All these other people did.
Yeah.
And then I get to plug our little ships into the infrastructure that already exists.
That's right.
And so you don't always have to go raise capital. And in fact, I love a venture capitalist that says, hey, we're not for everybody.
Yeah.
And most people shouldn't.
Yeah.
And I invest in startups. So like I want the best ones to win too.
Yeah.
But I also want people to keep their company as much as they fucking can as a founder.
No doubt. 100%.
I guess that's where I want to kind of end maybe here. So I loved one of the articles you did back in the day about the business model of giving away $1 and getting paid 85 cents.
Yes.
And I'm curious for you today, like, what do you see in this atmosphere of venture capital today that you're like, we got to be careful on this? Because you've been a canary in a coal mine a few times.
Yeah. So in the AI space, there's so much hyper competition. Well, first of all, the venture capital world, via this competition I talked about, has evolved to a place where the biggest funds now proactively knock on the doors of the companies they want to invest in and offer them money. So the days when the company would run out of money or get close to running out and decide, we're going to go raise now, is over. Like it's preemptive. It's 100% preemptive. And so you get a phone call that says, we want to put 300, 400, 500 million into your company. And you may be like, well, I've got all the capital I need. No thanks. But then they say, okay, we're going to go put it in your competitor. And so there's this global arms race. I lived it in the Uber Lyft thing, but now it's true in every single sector. And the reason this gets to your question is once you're in that place, and I would say AI coding is in this place right now, no one prices the cost anymore because they're definitely afraid of losing market share more than anything. So they price to get market share. They don't price to cost. Now, one day they'll have to price to cost. One day. And it will be a messy journey from here to there. And I fear that that's a reality in almost every sector at this moment in time. The venture industry used to get reset every 10 or 15 years. It'd just get walloped on the head and the number of firms would get cut in half and everyone would learn their lessons. And we were supposed to have a reset when AI came along. It had kind of started and then this huge disruption, everyone gets excited, money flows back in and we never had it. And so I can't predict when it will happen. It will probably be a long time from now, but it will happen. There will be a correction. It'll be messy. And that's why I would stay away from SPVs.
To circle it all up. I love that. You've essentially done a scary thing, I think, that a lot of people probably couldn't even understand, which is you take your money plus other people's money. You're the fiduciary of this money. And then you give it to somebody else. And you have some controls, but not all the controls. And especially in startup land, it's not like private equity where we can kind of run
you
the
guys
show.
Have control.
we can, which is good and
different.
bad.
It's wildly different.
Right. So I'm just curious, how do you manage that? How do you manage being so, trying to be founder friendly and trying to tell these young people, go for the moon, hit the stars, while talking to you, Timco, about the fact that you're going to fiduciary their capital?
I think it's really hard. Like, I used to use this metaphor, which I don't think makes sense to anybody, but I'll use it anyway. When I was young, and I'm almost 60, sometimes a friend of yours had a bicycle that was a little old and rickety and not all together. And the handlebars weren't in perfect connection with the front wheel. There was slop in it. And so you kind of thought you were steering, but you just had to oversteer a lot and you kind of went down the road in a janky way. And it's a lot like that. You don't have the steering wheel and your ability to influence is limited. And so you do everything you can to earn the respect of the founder. And respect is a different word than affection, I think. And it's hard. Like, it's super hard. And the great ones have figured out how to do it. And by the way, it's even harder with sycophants living in the later stage investment rounds because they come in and say everything the founder wants to hear. And that makes it even harder because here's somebody with a lot of money showing up who's not doing what you're doing, And so it's a craft for sure.
Was that wild when the movie came out about, Uber and you and Travis, and you were managing this bicycle in so many ways?
It was weird. It missed some points,
I imagine.
They, like in the very first scene, they're in this super fancy office. I can assure you Uber started in the dingiest, smallest of offices like most startups do. And I already talked about how determined Travis was. He's one of the smartest people I've ever met. He's one of the hardest working people I've ever met. And I don't think the film captured that element. It was more a vilification kind of thing. So part of the reason it wasn't overly weird is it wasn't so accurate, and that allowed me to view it in a different way, if you would.
Yeah, that's actually kind of helpful.
Yeah.
Because I think I know I've been in the center of some things online, but whenever I have been, I don't know that our brain can actually disassociate what is really happening in real life versus when everybody's talking about you online.
I thought the WeWork film did a much better job of capturing some of the nuances, like around Masa.
Yeah.
And how Masa putting money in causes randomization and craziness. You know, Leto in the character, and Leto did a ton of work for that role. I actually talked to him, and I don't know how they didn't win awards. Like,
I agree.
they were so good in that. But the character screaming, "Masa wants me to be crazier," and that was real. That's how it really was.
Well, and also, you know what I took away from that one? He was so brilliant in so many ways too. Like, and so many people are
Adam's a
vilifying
force
him.
of nature. Maybe we can end with this anecdote,
Yeah.
but I remember where I was when he presented to us. Now, keep in mind, Benchmark's never done a real estate transaction in the history of the firm. And we're about 30 minutes into the presentation. This is Series A, right? So there's almost nothing there. And I knew we were going to do the deal, like without even talking to the partners, because I mentioned when we started, we talked about salesmanship, and he has a level of salesmanship that I had never seen before, never seen, like unit of one. And so you take the flyer, like you have to take the flyer.
This is similar to that, but what I took away also was like, I think his wife is portrayed kind of in a gnarly way sometimes.
Yeah.
But there were a couple moments where I was like, yeah, maybe not the best advice, but also fucking brilliant. And she seemed to push him to be better too. So it almost seems like these founders and maybe the people around them have to be on this edge between the two.
Yeah, I'm not going to name any names, but there are some very successful founders that eventually reined it in and got it together, but where you could have easily seen them going over the edge, you know, at different points along the way, that didn't. But I think you're right. Being on that edge may be important.
Bill Gurley, this is so amazing. I so enjoyed. I mean, David and I have been reading your book. We have all these notes on it. And I also think it's really cool. At first I called Tim Ferriss, our like mutual friend. And I was like, Tim, I want more stories from Bill. I was like, I want Bill to tell me about this and this. And he said like two really lovely things about you, which is one, he was like, he's like a pretty humble guy. So he doesn't like, he's really not going to like quote unquote spill the beans on all this stuff.
Right.
And then two, he was like, he's so smart. So we'll talk about whatever you want. But he goes, think about it for a second. When one person has been really successful in one thing that they've done for 30 years, how many chapters are in that book? And I was like, I think it's really cool that you put a bunch of chapters in this book and that you talk about something that can really help the next generation, not even the superheroes, but like everyone. So Thanks for writing the book. Thank you for being on the podcast.
Thanks for having me on.
It was so useful.
Appreciate it.
How do I build more energy? How do I get more money? That's not the first question.
If you've ever felt like your attention is scattered, like your energy is depleted, like you're reacting to your life instead of creating it intentionally, this episode is going to be a game changer for you and me. Today's guest is Dandapani, a Hindu priest, entrepreneur, and former monk who left a career in engineering to spend a decade in a monastery. Now he teaches global leaders and some of the biggest athletes in the world how to use your mind to change your life.
Reason shouldn't end where spirituality begins.
If you want practical tools to make sure that the things you want in life you can create, then you should listen closely. What's the most powerful thing you've ever seen happen from someone who truly obsesses on focus? Welcome back to the Big Deal Podcast. I'm Codie Sanchez. We are growing like crazy, you guys, and we realized over the past few weeks that most of you don't actually subscribe to the show, which is crazy. So if you could do me a favor and double check that you're subscribed, that would mean so much to me. I've been obsessed with making this show something that makes your life better, and this helps us do exactly that. So from the bottom of my heart, thank you. All right, let's jump in. What is the 3 stripes?
It's monk Wi-Fi. Good signal to God. 3 lines, 1 line, not so good.
Really?
No, just kidding. So in Hinduism, there are 4 sects, and I belong to the oldest one.
Okay.
And we wear ash representing the 3 lines. The first line represents ego. So a lot of times in spirituality, they say you should not have an ego. Yeah. In the philosophy we subscribe to, we believe everyone has an ego, and the goal is to cultivate a positive ego. So someone who's kind, who's compassionate, who has empathy, industrious, charitable. So that's the first one. It's not get rid of ego, but cultivate a positive ego. And the second one has to do with karma, which is the law of cause and effect, that every thought, word, and deed has a repercussion. So that's 50% of karma. And if you can control your thoughts, your words, your actions, you can control a lot of your outcomes. The second half of karma is your reactions. So if you came up to me and said, Dandapani, your shawl is ugly, I could choose to pinch you or say, what a great opportunity to go shopping. And how I respond also determines my outcome. So by controlling how we act and react, we determine so much of our outcomes in life. And then the third one is delusion, meaning that quite often in life, we get distracted with the things and people that are unaligned with our priorities. So always bringing our focus back to who and what matters. Understanding that life is finite and, it's easy to get distracted with things.
It is. Is it ever hard to be a spiritual person, especially with like such an external representation of it? The marks, the shawl, the beads, in a world where that's not quote unquote normal. Do you ever get self-conscious?
No, because I don't wear this because it's cool. I wear this because I love my culture. I love my tradition. I love my faith. And this is a traditional outfit of a Hindu priest and also Hindu monastic. So it's very hard to tell the difference between monks and priests because they're pretty much dressed the same. But I'm very proud of my culture. So it's hard for people sometimes looking at me and they don't know how to respond.
Interesting.
And they see all this and they go like, oh.
Yeah, what does that mean?
Yeah, what does that mean? And for some people, it makes them extremely uncomfortable, and others are very curious and want to know more.
It's one of the things that I liked when I first started following your teachings and got on your app, which I love.
Thank you.
Yeah. I really liked following you because you're of the world as well as, of a spiritual practice. Yeah. And I would aspire to meditate and to do all the things that I read in books from spiritual leaders. But then I'd go back and a company would be losing money and somebody would have stolen from me and fraud would have happened. And it just felt so far away from a monastery. And yet you have kind of chosen to come out and build businesses, not normal for monks or do you even call yourself a monk?
No. So I was an ordained Hindu monk, celibate Hindu monk in a cloistered monastery. And then when my vows expired after 10 years, I left the monastery. So now I'm a priest. And in Hinduism, priests are considered householders. So we can get married, have a family, work in McDonald's or be an entrepreneur. And I chose to be an entrepreneur. So this is a traditional way of a Hindu priest. And, now I run my own business and work with entrepreneurs and athletes. And
but I love that because you bring some of these ideas into everyday life and then you get to practice it too. You have, I'm sure, have many moments where an app costs a ton of money to build and then all of a sudden it's not working and then your users hate you, but you're like, wait, I thought I was just, one with God. Like what happened, right?
All of those and a lot more. And I think, Codie, people see the dress and their first perception is that, he lived as a monk, so he's got it all figured out, his focus, his whole day is Zen. BS. I have the same chaos that every entrepreneur has and all the highs and lows and the same struggles that anyone that has a family has. Why would it be different for me? I would say the only difference would be that I was given a set of tools in the monastery and taught how to use those tools and apply it in my life. But that doesn't mean that my life is free of chaos. I have the choice every day to choose whether I want to apply those tools or not. And if I don't apply those tools, then I reap the repercussions. If I apply the tools, then I handle my challenges better.
Yeah, you have an incredible analogy about awareness and the mind, where awareness is a glowing orb and the mind is vast as space. Can you explain that analogy a bit?
I would say of all the things I learned from my guru, that was the most profound thing about the mind. He looked at the mind as a vast space with many different areas. So if you think one area of the mind is happy, joy, sad, food, sex, photography, money, different areas of the mind, and awareness as a glowing ball of light, an orb, and you are pure awareness. You're traveling to different areas of the mind, and wherever awareness goes in the mind, it lights up that area and you become conscious of it. So if awareness goes to the anger area of the mind, it lights up that area and you all of a sudden go, oh, I'm angry. But what you should be saying is, I'm in a place in the mind called anger. I chose to be here. as easily I can remove myself from here and move to another area of the mind. And I give the analogy of a mansion. So imagine a mansion with 100 rooms, and every room is a different state of mind or area of the mind. So one room is anger, one room's happiness, one room's jealousy. I walk in the mansion, I'm pure awareness. I climb up the stairs, walk down the hallway, I open the door, I go into the angry room, and I close the door behind me. And I am in rage. I come out of the room, I walk down the hallway, I open another room, I enter that room, I'm in the room of happiness. And once you realize that you're not the mind, rather your awareness moving within the mind, now you have a choice every day to either choose where you want to go or allow your environment, the people and things around you, to dictate where you want to go. So if you said to me my shawl was ugly, I could let you take my ball of light to an angry area of the mind, and I go like, Cody, how could you say that to me? Or I could go like, I should go shopping, you know? Yeah. Monkshawls.com, see what they have.
I think your shawl's lovely, for the record.
Thank you.
We're actually kind of matching.
Yeah,
maybe I did that
nice.
subconsciously.
I like it. So that's the key, right? The key is to control awareness. And every time throughout the whole day, regardless of what's going on in your family, your business, your awareness is perpetually moving in your mind. And if you can control where it goes, you can control how you react and respond to a situation. For me, the way I practice is I look at my whole day as my gym, my mental gym. When I'm talking to an employee who's not doing something I told them to do, or something's going on with the business, or whatever it is, every moment I have the choice to choose where my awareness goes. And if someone does something to take my awareness to a different area of the mind, then I go, okay, my ball of light's going to an area of the mind I don't want it to go. I'm going to grab it with my willpower and bring it back here. And I'm going to stay here and choose not to go there. You know, I flew here yesterday, and it's a classic example. My flight got delayed, and everyone's in the plane, was sitting for an hour, and you could see people's awareness going to the frustrated area of the mind. You know, like, what's going on? Why are we still sitting here? And I saw my ball of light wanting to go there, and I had to just bring it back and go, I'm like, I don't need to go there. I can choose to be somewhere else.
One of the other things you talk about that I love is willpower.
Yeah.
And there's many examples from your work that I like, but can you talk about even the way you define willpower and how important it is? It's not something that I hear a lot of spiritual people talk about. And so can you talk a little bit about if somebody wants to increase their willpower, what do they do and how do you define it?
So I would define willpower as mental muscle. If I could draw biceps around my mind, that would be my willpower. You know, a very simplified definition of it. So every time my ball of light drifted away, I would use these biceps, grab that ball of light and drag it back here and say, don't go there, right? And you can go there. And it's not about avoiding that place. It's choosing when I want to engage with that situation. So for example, if I had a fight with Joe about something, an argument with Joe, if I didn't control my ball of light, my awareness would perpetually be going to that every 2 minutes. Like, I can't believe he said that. I keep typing, and it's like, oh, he's such an idiot. Keep typing. And those are called mental arguments, and people have mental arguments in their head all day long. But when you develop willpower, every time that ball of light drifts there, you just grab it and bring it back. And there are 3 ways to develop willpower. Finish what you begin, do a little bit more than you think you can, and do it a little bit better than you think you can. And for me, the easiest way to bring practices into our life, you know, a lot of spiritual people would tell you, wake up in the morning, do yoga, breathe, do your cold plunge and this and that. It's hard when you have a family, when you have a business. But the way I look at it is, if you look at your day and you ask yourself, what are the non-negotiable reoccurring events in your day? Every day I sleep. It's non-negotiable and it reoccurs. So how can I take the practice and insert it into that event? So every night before I go to sleep, I floss, I brush my teeth, put my pajamas on, I go to bed. When I wake up, I make the bed in the morning. I finish what I begin. I make the bed a little bit better than I think I can. I do a little bit more than I think I can. Maybe I double fold the comforters, like do the 4 seasons, or, fluff the pillows. And that is not about making the bed. It's about developing willpower so that I can control where my ball of light goes in my mind.
I loved when you talked about the dishes, because the dishes I hate to do. I hate to do the dishes. I hate them categorically. And I think when I first started listening to you a few years ago, you had told the same story about if you're going to do the dishes, I want you to start it and finish it.
Yeah.
We don't do it halfway. And then how could you do it a little bit better? Clean the crystal, put the, put it away when you're done. And what's fascinating is in our companies now, it sort of has imbued this idea of how you do anything is how you do everything.
Yes.
And
exactly.
that we are the type of people here who start something and finish it well, and we're no better than the janitor. We clean up our own mess.
Absolutely.
And so now it's a big pet peeve, and everybody here knows it. Whenever I see dishes in the sink, it's like, we don't do that here. We're not that type of person. Yeah. And that sort of like ripples.
Yes.
And so I loved that teaching from you, so small, everybody can do it, and yet kind of profound.
It is. And, like my daughter, we live in Costa Rica, and, we don't wear our shoes in our house. So when we come back, we take our flip-flops off and leave it outside. And my daughter used to just, she's 6 and she kicks it aside. And, I've taught her like, okay, let's finish the process of going out. When we take our flip-flops off, let's just arrange it nicely before we go in. That's going to take an extra 3 seconds. But now it becomes part of a ritual. And the goal really at the end of the day, Cody, it's like, how do we take the key tools that we have in our life that are aligned with what we want to create and integrate them into the rituals that exist in our life? Because if I told you to wake up tomorrow morning and meditate and do yoga and breathe, you're going to go like, I don't have time for this, right? But every day you have a cup of coffee. Every day you sit in front of your computer. Every day you talk to somebody. What if you brought those tools into your daily rituals, those mundane little things? Now your whole day becomes a practice. And by the time you go to bed, you've been practicing for 10 hours, developing willpower, practicing focus, and all these other things, managing your energy. And that's a much better approach than to wake up in the morning, meditate for half an hour, and then spend the remaining 15 hours running around like a head-cut chicken, and thinking, okay, I did my morning meditation, I had my matcha, or whatever you had to drink, and then the rest of the day you just go crazy. That doesn't help.
That was such a good point. I was at this is a little judgy, which I shouldn't, but I was sitting at a coffee shop the other day, and I was watching these two people who had obviously come back from Burning Man. Yeah. And, and they were like well-dressed, but still had their dusty boots on. And so I was kind of chuckling about that. And then I'm judgy. Yeah. And so anyway, but what was so funny is they blessed their meal, which I thought was really nice, but it was like a prolonged blessing, it was like, and we're feeling it and we're feeling it. So I'm sitting there going, well, this is different. And then.
Were you with them?
No, I was being a voyeur from another table.
Yes, I like it.
And then, and they were talking really broadly about spirituality. Oh, the universe and everything's connected and it's all love and we have to bless our food. And then the door swings open and the woman's chair is like a little close to the door. So the door hits her and she's like, watch what you're doing. What's going on? Like that. And so I just had this whole thing happen here of watching this moment of you could bless the thing, you could meditate in the morning, but then you lose your practice. Yeah. And so like, how could you bring it throughout the day? I think is really beautiful. Not just when you're at a peak event like Burning Man or even church on Sunday.
Yeah. I remember when I first moved to New York, I knew a yoga teacher there and she said, come to my class. So I said, okay. She said, come to my apartment and then we'll walk over together. And I went to her apartment and she was running around finding her stuff. Where's my keys? I can't find my keys. Put her shoes on, her dog. It was just chaos. And she's like walking really fast down the sidewalk with me, getting to the yoga studio. She gets in there, she sits down, puts her mat, and then she sits in front. She's teaching the class. And all of a sudden she turned into this Zen person, And I went like, but all that minutes prior was chaos. So for me, it's not about the 10 minutes in the morning or the 20 minutes. It's like, how do you bring this into your daily life? Yeah. And people can do the food blessing and can look great in a yoga class for 10 minutes or an hour. What's the remaining 23 hours, huh? And the way I look at it, Cody, is an analogy. You probably heard of Usain Bolt. Yeah. Right. I don't know anything about this man. I know he's from Jamaica. He won gold medals, fastest man on earth. His 100 meters is 9.56 seconds or something. I would assume that he trains every day when he was running, does weights, eats properly, stretches. His whole day is preparing him from 9.56 seconds, not 9.56 seconds preparing him for the whole day. And most spiritual people will look at their life. If I meditate for 10 minutes in the morning, I journal, that's going to set me up for the day. the way my guru trained me was the complete opposite. Your whole day is the practice that prepares you for the morning meditation. Does that make sense?
Yes.
So don't look at the morning practice as the most important thing, but rather look at integrating the practice throughout the whole day.
Interesting.
Yeah.
I also want to talk about focus,
Yeah.
because you are, very big on that as well. What have you seen? Maybe we start by defining it again, because I know
Yeah.
you like to do that. And then I think that's smart. We do it in business. I never think about it in this spiritual practice.
It just creates a shared vocabulary and understanding, right? And then when we say the word focus, everybody in the room knows what it means.
Yeah, it's a good point. It's, today we were talking about it in work in a different way. And I was saying, well, when somebody goes above and beyond and does extra work, we want to recognize them. And then I paused and was like, wait, I should define above and beyond.
Yes.
Because
it means different things to different people.
Right. And I don't just want somebody working from 6 a.m. to 9 p.m. on stuff that doesn't matter. And then that's above and beyond. And so then we have to define it. Well, above and beyond in this instance means something that drives meaningful revenue or views, let's say, on a video. And if it doesn't do those two things, it's actually not meaningful work. It could just be busy work. So I'd love you to define focus. And then also tell me, what's the most powerful thing you've ever seen happen from someone who truly obsesses on focus?
Mm-hmm. So I would define focus, going back to awareness and the mind and the ball of light. Focus is my ability to keep my awareness on you without it wavering. Mm-hmm. So if I'm talking to you and my ball of light drifts away, I'm getting distracted. If I can keep my ball of light, my awareness on you the entire time, I'm in a state of focus. So most people are always physically present. We're physically present with each other, but mentally absent. Because how many times have you been in a conversation with someone, talking to them, and they go, huh? And they're completely checked out. Their awareness is somewhere else, but they're looking at you going, right? And you just go like, and then people ask, where are you? The right answer is, I'm right in front of you. But the proper question is, where's your awareness? They go, oh, honey, it left the moment you started talking, because that's what happens. And how do you know? My guru had this beautiful saying, where awareness goes, energy flows. So if my awareness is on you, my energy is flowing towards you. You feel my energy. Now, if I ask you a question and you respond, and I start listening to the first few words, and then my awareness drifts away and go like, I wonder what I should have for lunch today. But I'm looking at you and nodding, and my awareness goes somewhere else. That's where my energy is flowing. You no longer feel my energy, and you go, where are you? So that's just to clarify what focus means. The greatest thing I would probably see coming out of focus, is from my guru. He had an amazing control over his ball of light in his mind. If you look at the mind in a simplified way, Cody, you could look at it as a 3-story building. The bottom floor is the conscious mind, the external mind, where it's tied to our 5 senses, and it's the world we live in, phone calls and emails and everything. The second floor is the subconscious. It's the storehouse of memory, information, habit patterns. And then the third floor is what my guru would refer to as the superconscious mind. It's the source of intuition, creativity, higher spiritual minded things. Only through a focused state can you take your ball of light from the first floor through the second floor to the third floor. And once you go to the third floor, you need to have so much willpower to hold that ball of light there in order to experience that state of mind. So imagine if I picked up a 1,000-page book and I just flipped through the pages, I would read nothing, right? But if I took a 1,000-page book, I opened it up, and I held my gaze on one page and went through every sentence, I would be able to read it. So a lot of people may be able to go into the superconscious area of the mind, this deeply spiritual, intuitive area, so briefly, and it feels wonderful, and they come out of it. But the key is to be able to go in there, remain in a state of unwavering focus long enough that you can actually experience it in a profound way. Because if not, all you're doing is just fanning through the pages of a book and you never read anything. The only way I can get that experience is if I stay on the page and read every single word slowly. So I would say that would be the greatest experience of focus, is the ability to take awareness, go to that superconscious area of the mind, stay there for an extended period of time, and truly experience your highest state of mind.
What does it feel like when you go there? Is that when you get lost in something that you're doing that you love? How would somebody know if they've done that?
It's not a binary experience. I will look at it as as layers. So I can go out and feel the sun's rays on me. But if I went 1,000 miles closer towards the sun, I probably maybe feel a little warmer. I'm assuming I don't know anything about this. Or if I go 10,000 more miles, I'd feel more of the sun. The superconscious is that way as well. It's layered. If you enter the fringes of the superconscious area of the mind, the fringes of the third floor, you feel a sense of the first sign of the awakening of that superconscious is observation. People become more observant. That's when someone becomes more observant, you know they're starting to go into the superconscious area of the mind. That's the first sign of the awakening of the superconscious. Another sign is good timing. I knew when I lived in New York for 11 years, I could tell if my awareness was on the third floor or not by how long I waited for the subway. My wife would say to me, "You have good timing." And she would always get the subway with me. Because if I walked up the stairs, got on the platform, if I waited longer than 15 seconds, I was not in the superconscious area of the mind. And I would be at home in my apartment working, and my intuition would say, "Leave now to get ready for your meeting." And I'll say, "Just one more email." Then I'm out of sync. But if I was obedient to that, I would have good timing. So those are two things, observation, good timing. And as you go deeper and deeper, Cody, you experience the very essence of who you are, which is a soul that is pure energy, and energy cannot be created or destroyed, has always existed. You start to tap into a part of you that you realize, okay, I am energy. Everything is made up of energy. Energy can never be created, which means I've always existed. Energy can be transformed from one thing to another, law of thermodynamics. So I'm transforming, evolving, but in essence, I'm pure energy. And as you start to go into that, you feel a great sense of love and compassion and peace. But it's not a one-time experience. Can you have one success in business and say you're a successful entrepreneur? No. You have to do it over and over again. So the key is to repeatedly have awareness go into the superconscious mind every day till that permeates your entire being and that becomes your default of who you are. Same way you would see a seasoned entrepreneur who's gone through all the highs and lows, and he or she at that point knows how to ride this out. You know, they can handle difficult times because they know what to do. You know, it's 30 years, 40 years of this. And the mystic is no different as well. He or she has gone into the superconscious so much that it's become a part of their being now.
Do you notice a difference about people who are very worldly successful? Do they carry themselves differently? Have they done this practice a different way? Is there anything that you've noticed from some of the most influential people you've ever worked with, spoken with?
I would say two things. They have a lot of clarity of what they want and a tremendous amount of desire to get it. I had the good fortune of working with one of the top soccer players in the world for 3 years, for 3 seasons. And he knew crystal clear in his mind what he wanted to achieve. And the desire he had for it was unparalleled. I'd seen monks with it, you know, and he really, really wanted it. So the combination of knowing what you want and having that intense desire for it helps you to get there. So most people don't really know what they want and then don't really have a desire for it. They try and then they give up. But you have to want it more than life itself. You know, when I met my guru before I joined the monastery, I told him what I wanted in life, which was enlightenment. And he asked me, what are you willing to do for it? And I was in college then. I said, I'm willing to give up my life. And I joined his monastery and, you know, in my early 20s. And I didn't speak to my family again, my friends, had 3 meals a day and didn't talk to relatives, didn't do all the things that everybody in the world does. Because I was willing to give up everything in my life to pursue this. And that's what I see in some of the most successful entrepreneurs and athletes. They want that and they're willing to do whatever it takes to get it.
How long did you give up everything for when you were in the monastery?
10 years.
So you didn't speak to your family for 10 years?
In the early years, you got to talk to them twice a year, like on a phone call. So no emails, no letters. You get like a 30-minute call and call your mom and dad.
So at one point you're in school You have a defined career path too. Were you going to be an engineer? What was
I was, I did electrical engineering.
Yeah. So you're an electrical engineering college student. I mean, I remember what I was like in college. Not that was not a direction I could have ever imagined.
No,
What was the moment that you were like, I'm going to go dedicate 10 years of my life to enlightenment?
I wanted to be a monk since I was 4 or 5 years old. And I was looking for a teacher that could teach me. And I met many wonderful monks and gurus along the way. But none of them, they all said inspiring things, but none of it I felt was practical and relevant to my life. They talked about big ideas and big concepts, and they talk about the mind and use words I couldn't wrap my head around. It wasn't until I met my guru that I found, for the first time ever, a monk that could articulate the goal for me, the path to the goal, the spiritual goal, the philosophy, to ensure you're actually making progress. What are your KPIs on the spiritual path, right? Because if you don't have that, I remember him saying to me one day, Dandapani, if you meditate every day and after 6 months you're still a jerk, you're probably doing the wrong practice. You're not making progress, right? So most people don't review their progress to see if there's any change. He made me monitor and measure my spiritual unfoldment to know that I'm making traction down the path, and share with me tools that I could integrate in my life rather than just high-minded philosophies and concepts that sound so wonderful, but in real life weren't relevant.
So you leave, how old are you?
I was 23 and a half, 24.
Okay. So you leave and you go move where?
To Kauai in Hawaii, yeah.
And you live in a monastery for 10 years.
Traditional cloistered monastery as a celibate monk under vows.
What does cloistered mean?
Means it's closed off, that guests could only come in to visit, like between 9 and 12 in the morning, and then the gates closed, and only monks under vows live within it. So there's a lot of modern day play pretend monasteries nowadays where you can come and go whenever you want and go for the weekend and say, I lived as a monk for a weekend. Like, okay. But this is like the real deal. You go and you take vows and you follow a traditional path that's, philosophy that's over thousands of years old.
And what would a day look like?
We woke up early. I usually wake up around between 4 and 4:15 in the morning. And, we'd have meditation in the morning. We'd 10 rituals, traditional Hindu rituals. We'd had to exercise half an hour a day. We only had 3 meals a day, so breakfast, lunch, dinner, no snacking in between. And the monastery was divided into 5 groups. So one group of monks took care of desktop publishing. We put all our content in books and online, so monks had to learn, Adobe InDesign and Photoshop and edit movies and Final Cut Pro and all that kind of stuff. Another group of monks took care of the endowments. So they did all the financial stuff. My guru he had a beautiful relationship with money. And I really loved that about him, because when I was growing up, people would say to me, if you want to be spiritual, then you shouldn't pursue money. Money's bad. Money is the root of all evil. Whereas he looked at money as a beautiful thing that we could spread around like fertilizer and make things grow. Is what he said. So the monks were divided into different groups, and and then our day ended at 9 o'clock at night, and we went to bed.
Wow.
Yeah.
You know how I'm always saying, stop waiting, start owning? Most people never even get to the starting line because they're drowning in the setup. Websites, logos, emails, social posts. It's like they're building a business in their heads instead of the real world. That's where GoDaddy Arrow comes in. And let me tell you, total game changer. You just punch in a few prompts and bam, you've got a website, a logo, even your first marketing posts. It's like a whole tech team in your back pocket, minus the payroll. What used to take weeks, now it's minutes. And that means you can skip the busy work and get straight to the good stuff, actually growing your business. So if you got an idea collecting dust, stop overthinking it. Go make it real. Check out GoDaddy Arrow at the link below and start building today. No excuses. You guys, I'm doing something absolutely wild. I am throwing the biggest event on business ownership we've ever thrown. And every single person that comes will get something worth $1,177, which is actually crazy. And I'm not talking about like courses or online videos that I put a fake price tag on. I mean, this is real value, really priced at that you get from attending this event. So if you are into business, you're going to want to be there, and everybody will leave with a pack of goodies. Just call me Santa. See you at msm.live. You said, you had this saying that I loved, which you kind of hit on a little bit. You've said problems are meant to be resolved as quickly as possible and not to be carried on gruelingly through life.
Yeah.
Can you talk about this?
Yeah. Going back to the 3 states of mind, if you and I had an argument and we don't resolve it, we have it now in the conscious mind. And once we walk away, that problem gets registered in the subconscious, which is the second floor. We talked about the second floor. The more problems we have unresolved in the second floor, the more cluttered the second floor becomes. The superconscious intuition lives in the third floor. For intuition to go to the conscious mind on the first floor where we can cognize it, it needs to go through the second floor. And if the second floor is cluttered, intuition can't come through. So most people don't like to resolve problems because it involves facing it, accepting it, owning it, having a conversation about it, resolving it, and it's painful and uncomfortable. So as monks, our goal is to live more intuitively rather than intellectually, because our intuition never ever guides us wrong. And the more cluttered the second floor is with unresolved things from our past, and it's harder for intuition to come through. A simple analogy would be this. Imagine the sun as the third floor, the superconscious mind, the sky as the subconscious, and the ground, the earth, as the conscious mind. In order for the sun's rays to hit the ground, it needs to go through the sky. If the sky is really cloudy, filled with unresolved clouds, rays of light don't get through. If it's a clear sky, you get this beautiful sun rays. So the sky would be the subconscious mind. When it's filled with clouds and the rays of light coming from the superconscious mind never gets through. So the idea of resolving things as quickly as possible, especially before you go to bed at night with a spouse, is a great. The monks had that practice. So if monks had arguments, which my guru was totally fine with monks arguing with each other, the only rule in the monastery was that you had to go resolve it before you went to bed at night.
So do you think you should fight when you're angry with someone?
I think if it's with a partner, a spouse, or even a business partner, relation, whatever it is, it's fine as long as you set up the guideline that we can have a heated argument, walk away, have a few hours by ourselves to calm down, but we will get together before the day ends and sit down and resolve this. So in the monastery, there was a big mango tree with some seats under it. And that's where we would go and resolve the problems. When you see 2 monks sitting under the mango tree, they're resolving a problem. So, if you had that rule, it's normal to have misunderstandings, even if you're a spiritual person. So as long as you plan to resolve it, then you're not taking it to bed with you.
How do you make the clouds move? How do you unclutter the second floor? You resolve things in the day, but what about all the historical stuff that's already up there? What is the practice to see the sun again?
You cannot see what's in the second floor if you cannot focus. Because if I can't sit down quietly in a chair, not meditating, in a state of self-reflection, just looking inside of me, if I start to do this and after 5 seconds I go, what should I have for lunch? Is my phone ringing? Should I answer that? Oh, I had a text come in. Maybe he's trying to reach me. He was trying to reach me all day. I should really get back to him. And that's the conversation most people have. But if I can focus, I can hold my awareness on my second floor long enough to see everything in my mind. That's the first step, focus. Focus allows you to see what's in there. The second step is having extreme levels of self-empathy and compassion. Looking at yourself as a product of evolution. So the way I look at myself is I look at myself as a building under construction. If you've ever been to a construction site, you see rebar and concrete and broken glass, and you never complain because you go like, well, they're still building. There's shit lying everywhere, right? But if you go to Tiffany's and you see a broken glass, there'd be 5 people around it and say, oh, we're cleaning this up. Don't come here. There's broken glass. So when I look at myself and I see the mess in my second floor and the good parts, I go, this is me. I am a product of evolution. I am a building under construction. I'm not done yet. There's still work being done. And I can accept that. I can own that. Now it takes all that pressure off me to be something that I'm not. I can accept myself for who I am and where I am in my evolution. Now I identify what's the biggest thing in my subconscious that I want to resolve, because the biggest thing that basically is influencing me in a way that's unaligning me from my purpose. So the willpower, bring it into your daily life. Finish what you begin. The coffee cups, the shoes, clean your desk before you go home at night, put everything away. The focus, every time you speak with someone, give them your undivided attention. Keep your ball of light on them. It drifts away, bring it back. It drifts away, bring it back. And if you just practice this all day long, you become good at it. Now you have willpower and you have focus. You can start to reflect and identify what's inside of you that you need to adjust. And if we don't do the work on ourselves, we'll never be the person we need to be to achieve what we want to be, because we don't have those skills to match the goals we have.
Yeah, I really like that.
I am the biggest obstacle in my life.
Me too.
To my business, my relationships, in everything I do. So I don't worry so much about fixing a lot of the external things. I need to fix me. And the more I fix me, the better I am at every part of my life.
Does that work for everybody if they focus on willpower, energy, and focus?
Absolutely, yes. Because there are standard, it's like if everybody in this room went to the gym and lifted weights, we'd all start to get muscle. It doesn't matter who the person is or what gender they are, they'd all start to get weights. Start to build muscle, right? So when you start to do these things, you'll start to see you become more observant. Well, the first thing you do is you start to see more of your stuff inside of you. And that's when people stop doing the work, because it makes them so uncomfortable that they go, this is too ugly. And one of the byproducts of actually meditating is seeing what's in your subconscious. Because if I stay still, I close my eyes, I don't move, I regulate my breath, my conscious mind starts to get shut down, the first floor. Now my second floor becomes the dominant floor. And now I see what's in my subconscious. I remember the first year in the monastery, we'd meditate together, the monks, for an hour. And if I had a really good meditation, I knew the rest of my day is crappy. Because all the stuff in my second floor was being shown to me, or I started to see. And then the rest of the day, I go, I'm a terrible human being. I'm a really bad monk.
Wow.
So most people think when you meditate, it's bliss. But in order to get to the third floor where the bliss is, you have to go through the second floor.
Oh, interesting.
Yeah.
Yeah, I guess it does make sense. You go to the gym, you work out, you're going to be sore afterwards if you did it right.
Yes.
If you pushed yourself.
Another example, just to make this clearer, if you've ever been to a bar and seen someone who's drunk, when someone gets drunk, they're shutting down the conscious mind. The conscious mind gets dull, the first floor. The second floor becomes dominant. Now they start saying things that they were thinking, oh, your sweater looks ugly. I was like, I didn't mean to say that, right?
Yeah.
So that's a similar thing. So meditation and getting drunk are a little bit similar, and shutting down the first floor, and then the second floor becomes dominant. And you start to see what's in people's mind. And that's why when you're having drinks with people at a dinner party or something, and someone's had 3 or 4 drinks, you start to tell very quickly what's on their mind. Because there's no filter, and they just start saying things. And you go like, oh, I know what you're thinking.
Yeah, one of my favorite mentors in business always said he won't do a deal with somebody until he's had a few cocktails with them.
Exactly, yes. In traditional monasteries, in certain monasteries, monks would drink. They would sit around a table on the ground, and the guru would pour a little bit of like mead, honey mead for everyone, and they'd take a drink. And after 2-3 drinks, the monks are going like, this place of food is terrible. Like, oh, that's good to know. Whereas they normally wouldn't say it, having not had a couple of drinks.
Yeah.
It's a great way to tell what's in someone's mind.
I want to talk a little bit about energy.
Yeah.
You've talked about treat energy the same way you treat money.
Yes.
It's a finite resource that needs to be managed wisely and invested. Can you expand on how someone can manage their energy and invest it properly?
Yeah. So the simple way to manage energy, I would say, take every principle you know on finance, on how you manage money, and apply it to energy. Create a budget. Do we evaluate do you have investments?
Yeah.
How often do you evaluate your investments?
Probably once a month.
Once a month, right? And after a few months or a couple of years, you find an investment is doing really badly, and would you stay, or you may pull out your money and put it somewhere else potentially?
Sure.
Yeah. When was the last time we evaluated the people in our lives that we give energy to? We don't even do it once a year. Every year around November, December, I have a list of all the people I'm actively involved with. and I assign statuses to them and how much energy I'm giving, because I have a finite amount of energy, then I reallocate energy. So if Steve has been so amazing to me this year, I want to give him more energy. Now, energy cannot be created. I can't create more energy, but energy can be transferred from one thing to another, law of thermodynamics. So I go like, I'm going to take money out of Julie and energy out of Julie and move it to Steve. So Julie gets less energy. What does that translate to in real life? Next year, I'll spend less time with Julie, more time and energy with Steve. But if you don't have an evaluation process like you do for your investments, you probably have a set of practices on how you're evaluating, whether it's doing well, not, but checks and balances. You just all day, all month, all year long, just spend your energy.
I've never thought about it that way.
And you hemorrhage it.
Right. And I think most of us are conditioned to think about the energy that we're giving people based on the amount of time we have available.
Yes.
My calendar appears empty on Thursday, so I guess I have time to do this.
Yes.
Because that is the question that people ask, right? Do you have time to do X this week?
Yeah.
Can you do X? As opposed to what you really should be thinking is, do I want to?
Yeah.
And should I, based on
how much energy I have?
Yeah.
And can I tell you the difference between time management and energy management? So if time management, I say, very simplified, I sleep 8 hours, I work 8 hours, I'm spending 1 hour with my family having a meal. If I sat at the dinner table with my family for 1 hour, I could check the time management box and say, I did it. My question is, when you're at the table for 1 hour, you're physically present, where's your awareness? So if your family's eating and you're there with them and your kid's telling you something about school or whatever, your wife or husband's telling you something, but your ball of light is somewhere else, that's where your energy is flowing. It's not flowing to them. So time management wise, you can check the box and say, yes, I sat with my family for 60 minutes. But energy management, you actually gave your family only a tiny bit of energy because the rest of the time you were distracted and your energy was going somewhere else instead of going to them. So for me, it's not about time management. It's about managing energy. I could spend 5 minutes with you, and if I'm completely focused, you get all my energy in that 5 minutes. Or I can spend half an hour with you, and my ball of light's all over the place, and that's where my energy is going. And in that half an hour, you only get a tiny piece of energy. That's why, for me, focus is so important, because when I focus, that's where my awareness is going, and that's where my energy is flowing. Where awareness goes, energy flows. And for me, it's all about giving energy to the people and things that truly matter to me.
How do you not, what is the right way to say this? It's not too rude, which is like,
You can be rude.
which is like,
I'm more a New Yorker than anything
yes,
else.
that's probably true. But like, how do you tell somebody that you don't want them in your energy field anymore? Or how do you stop getting around somebody that's an energy vampire?
Start pulling back. Every time my awareness goes to you, Codie, my energy flows to you, and I'm building an energy connection. The fastest way to get rid of somebody in your life is to stop letting your ball of light go to them. Because imagine if my ball of light's a watering can, and the water in the watering can is energy. Every time my ball of light goes to you, I'm watering my connection with you. And I'm building that energy connection with you. So if I want to get rid of somebody in my life, I just move my ball of light away from them. They no longer get energy, and it just starts to wither away and go away. And the first step, I would say, in managing energy, a lot of the questions I get asked quite often is, how do I build more energy? Probably people ask you, how do I get more money?
Yeah.
That's not the first question. The first question is, where are you hemorrhaging energy? So if I had a bucket and I wanted to fill the bucket with water, what's the first thing I do? I make sure the bucket's clean. And the second thing I do is make sure the bucket has no holes in it. If the bucket had a hole, why would I put water in it? You'd literally be insane to put water in a bucket that had a hole in it. First step, plug the holes, then fill the bucket with water. So when you look at yourself and your physical body and your mind as a bucket that contains energy, rather than thinking, should I journal, meditate, eat healthy, exercise, go for walks to get more energy, the first question you should be asking, how many energetic holes do I have in my life? Because your body is like a bucket, and you're putting more energy in through healthier ways of living. But if you had a hole, where would that energy be going? It'd just be hemorrhaging out all day. First step, plug the holes. Where are you hemorrhaging energy? Who's taking your energy away? What is taking your energy away? There are better ways to say this. Get rid of those. Plug the holes, then start focusing on living a healthier life to get more energy. Does that make sense?
Yeah.
But we need to take a very structured, systematic approach. If we don't, I could meditate all day, drink green juice, exercise, meditate, do all these things to try to put more energy inside of me, but it's perpetually flowing out of me because I just have all these energetic holes.
Do most people, when you explain this to them the first time, get like the feeling I just got, which is like, oh no, I have so many holes. Like, it's almost like a visceral reaction, like, shoot, I'm a leaky bucket.
They do. And if I ask people, how many of you have an energy vampire in your life? Most people go like, do you have a name coming to your head right now?
Totally.
Yeah, I know you do.
I got one
Even
right
he
away.
does too.
Yeah. Right.
I can look at an audience of 2,000 people. I can just see names popping up in their heads right away. Oh, I know who that is. And sometimes it's difficult, right? Because sometimes it's a family member or a relative, a parent, a child, a sibling, and those are much more complicated situations. Sometimes they're not complicated situations. It's a friend from college that you've keeping around like an old shoe, 30 years later, and you think like, why? We're not aligned anymore.
How do you get people to break through? If all of us have those energy vampires, we never want to stab them in the heart with a stake.
Yes.
Like, what do we do to change that? How do we flip our mentality so we start actually like respecting ourselves more than we do this legacy relationship?
For me, the greatest impetus is death, and realizing that my life is not short, that it's finite. Because I don't believe life is short. When I'm stuck in traffic or waiting for the plane to take off, stuck on the tarmac, I don't think that 1 hour is short. It feels like eternity. So I feel people always say life is short, and I disagree. It's finite. There's a clear, definitive end. So for me, what do I choose to do with the time that I have left? How do I want to live that life? And I realized that I need clarity around my purpose in life, my priorities in life. And once I have clarity around that, I need the ability to focus and the ability to channel substantial energy to those things to make it grow. Like a business where they would raise money, raise capital to invest in it. This is not my area of expertise. I just, know very little. You'd raise money to channel into that, right? Because you need capital to grow the business. So life is no different as well. Once you're clear of your purpose in life, your priorities in life, you think, okay, I need capital now, energy capital, to channel to that, to make those things grow. Now, where am I hemorrhaging energy? Now you have an impetus, a reason to start plugging the holes. But if you don't have a reason to plug the holes, then you go like, yeah, it's just part of life.
Yeah.
There needs to be a reason. We do things because there's a reason.
So if you're struggling with energy management, the first thing is, okay, now I need to understand my why. And that might be death, the greatest of all. Yeah. And then it's sort of this audit. Let me just see where I feel the leaky buckets. Let me write it down. Let me analyze it. And then it's take your awareness away from that connection.
Because where awareness goes, energy flows. Yeah.
So I don't even have to tell them I'm not going to do coffee yet. I just am taking my awareness off them. And then the next step is just spend less time with them.
Yeah. And someone like you, where people come and ask you for advice or pick your brain, or anybody that has an expertise in a certain area, one simple practice I tell people to do is place the burden of responsibility on them. So for example, you know this. So just give them a task to do and see if they'll do it. And if they don't do it, don't meet with them.
What's your go-to task? Do you have one that you give to people?
Yeah, sometimes I will ask them to read my book. Or, sometimes like at events that I speak at, people will come up to me during the break or after the event, can I tell you about my relationship problem or this or that? And I said, I don't have much time right this moment, and I see this as such an important topic for you. Can you send me an email? It'll give me time to read it at home, reflect on it, and write you a response. and people don't email me.
I was going to say, what percentage of people do you
Nobody
think?
does.
Nope. Isn't it wild?
Yeah.
It's actually the craziest thing.
It's so crazy.
My go-to is, before I had a book, it was read somebody else's book. Now that I have a book, it's read mine.
Yeah.
But pick a book, any book, even if you haven't written one, and say like, I'd love to give you advice on that. Let me start here so we have like a shared basis of understanding.
Yes, exactly.
First, you got to read this.
Yep.
And what kills me is people will write you these emails or have these questions, and the feeling that I could like, they're like, it's life or death that you answer. But it's not.
In front of you, right?
Right.
Yes.
But then the second that you go away, it doesn't, which also gives me I think it makes me realize, so many people say it's really hard to get ahead in life. It's hard to do. And I'm like, I'm not sure, because so many people don't do the very simple thing that would be the first step. And so if you're willing to read the book and like did the thing you said you were going to do, which I guess is your first practice.
Yeah.
If you say you're going to do it and finish it.
Yeah. And people just don't desire things badly enough, Cody, and that's why they never get it. They want everything to be a quick fix, and everything is a hack today. How can we hack this? I've had someone come up to me and say, Dandapani, do you have a quick way for me to slow down? That makes a lot of sense. A quick way for me to slow down. Okay, let me help you with this problem.
You have said that, actually. You have this other line that I meditate on a lot, which is, you have fear when you are not confident in your own personal powers of creation. Yeah. And you need to realize your will is stronger than your mind.
Yes.
When I read that line, I think, man, am I not achieving the thing that I want to achieve because I don't believe that I could, actually? And thus, because I don't believe I could do it, my desire is not strong enough for it. Like, it almost feels like maybe my belief or desire is the thing that stands in the way most often.
I think it's important to say that if anybody ever says they don't have any doubts about achieving something, they're definitely lying. Everybody thinks twice about everything. Even the best athletes I worked with have doubts before a game. It's just a natural part of it. The difference is that they have this tremendous burning desire to achieve it, and that's where they end up getting. So I think for me, at the end of the day, it's the clarity, the crystal clear clarity that you have, and the specificity that comes out of it. And the more clear you are, the more specific it is as to what it is you want. Once that's defined, then it's about harnessing and channeling all that energy to it, in unwavering focus. Mm-hmm. Then that builds the confidence inside of you. But it's hard to have confidence to do something if you're not clear what it is you want. I was very clear I wanted to go to the monastery, not just to be a monk, but enlightenment was what I was seeking. And being a monk was the most efficient way to get there. So I was willing to do that. And when my guru asked me, what are you willing to do? I said, I'm willing to give my whole life for it. I was in my early 20s. My friends were graduating, buying cars, having an apartment, traveling and dating and doing all these things. And I'm like, I'm going to go live in a monastery because that's what I want. So the clearer you are, the narrower your focus becomes. It's the more energy you can channel and funnel towards that, the more confidence you have, the less fear you have that you won't achieve it, that you can get there.
Do you, how do you even ask, have you reached enlightenment? Have you touched that before? Are you still there? How does that work?
I would say, and again, every philosophy is different, so I can only speak from the Hindu philosophy. And again, in the Hindu experience, it's not a binary experience. It's more like I talked about approaching the sun, right? As you get closer and closer, you feel more of the intensity of the sun. As your awareness goes deeper and deeper into the superconscious area of the mind, to the essence of who you are, you experience deeper and deeper states of yourself. Mm-hmm. So it's not a binary like turn on the light and turn off the light, which people think, oh, I close my eyes, I meditate, I experience enlightenment, and then I come out of it. It's you get there, and then eventually you get to the sun and merge with the sun, and then you come back out again. So,
and have you felt that before?
The layers,
like super close to the sun? Is it like, let me tell you, in like a total normie sort of way, like when you do psychedelics. So like if I've done mushrooms, let's say, and I have an experience where I feel like I'm out of body, or I might have talked to God, is there an experience like that for you in Hinduism? That's not obviously done by drugs and altercations.
Yeah, absolutely. Yes. Yes. And a very profound experience. Yeah. I'm pausing because I don't talk about this publicly.
This is very personal?
Very personal, very sacred. And sometimes when you share the most sacred inner experience with somebody and people are like, nah.
Because they can't understand
They can't understand.
There's no way to express it.
And same with business, right? You know, I work with clients that run multi-billion-dollar companies. They know when they share something with me, I hold it with sacredness and gentleness, you know. Whereas if they share it with someone else, someone may say a response that is jarring to their nervous system because they just have no way of understanding it. And then they can also put doubt in your mind. Not that I would have it because I've been doing this for so long, but just say, you know, someone who's new on the spiritual path, you go on a retreat or something and you have this profound spiritual experience, you come back and then you share it with a bunch of random people and they go like, you sure you had that? Maybe you were just, you know, this. And then you go like, oh yeah, you might be right.
Yeah.
And now all of a sudden that profound experience you had has been the energy and the essence and sacredness